Welcome to Tekedia Daily. I'm Ndubuisi Ekekwe. A conversation today, we focus on the pillars, which are very critical for the development of microelectronics in Nigeria and also across Africa. Over the years, I have served as a committee member in the National Science Foundation, United States of America. I've also worked extensively in the microelectronic industry as an engineer, as a strategist, as well as leading the consulting aspect of Fast Micro Group, my company, working to architect microelectronics policy and strategies across most parts of the world. So the conversations I'm putting forward today, they are actually a part of a program which I had led in Rwanda as that vibrant, dynamic country begins a push to build an innovation capital of Africa within the domains of ICT and microelectronics. These five pillars, we believe vividly, if they are deployed, if they are managed, if they are um, built into critical order enablers, Africa will see itself not just a destination for microelectronics consumerism, but also a place where innovation in that important sector will happen. So I begin by saying, what is really this microelectronics? It's basically a field of engineering that everything we know today about electronics related products are handled. It's very closely related to semiconductors, which is mainly focusing on the other hard part of it, which we look at uh, production processes of wafer, stochastic method, flotation process, and how you actually go through the clean room to produce the devices. But electronics mainly looks at the interface of building, developing, designing the circuitry, and then getting them to the markets. So it's a very critical aspect of modern industry because microelectronics affects every aspect of our lives. In short, the world is run on electronics. The world is run on microelectronics. It provides the computational capabilities. It provides the computational systems which actually make the world we live today possible. Everything you see in the world of ICT is actually enabled by microelectronics. Without microelectronics, there is no ICT. Without microelectronics, we cannot have cell phones, we cannot have Google, we cannot have Facebook. So it is something that has to evolve, something that has to advance before ICT can actually develop. It's catalytic in every process, in medicine, entertainment, in energy, in transportation. There is nothing that has not been affected by microelectronics. Since John Kirby in 1957 invented the microprocessor, we have seen exponential impacts in the world global economy, how this device has changed our world. And countries around the world have developed intervention programs to drive the acceleration, drive the penetration, drive the creativity of the microelectronics sector. The US MOSIS program is structured to help universities and companies that cannot afford the necessary equipment and manufacturing capabilities to have access to the necessary technology for them to bring innovation in this sector. The same thing applies to the Europe practice, the CMC Canada, and just recently, Brazil also got into that game. And today in Latin America, Brazil has become a destination for microelectronics capital because it built focused intervention programs to deepen its capabilities in the microelectronics sector. The miracle of Shenzhen, China, is actually one that has to do with government intervention. So around the world, it's always critical that government has a focused, determined intervention program in the microelectronics sector. So why pillars for microelectronic development? It's largely because it is something you have to do in order to make sure that it actually happens. So unfortunately in Africa, unfortunately in Nigeria, we don't have a really electronic strategy. What we have is largely ICT. You come into Africa, they have an ICT policy and they say they have a technology policy. Perhaps ICT is not just the only technology in Africa, it's not the only technology in the world. It's just one aspect of technology. But when you read newspapers and when you read government gazettes and everything, it seems that technology is synonymous with ICT. So in Nigeria right now, we don't have largely electronic strategy. What we have is an ICT strategy. But ICT itself is an offspring of electronics. Without electronics, there is no ICT. Without Intel, AMD, ADI, and other devices where I used to work, there won't be any Google, Facebook, or Yahoo. So that means that for Nigeria to build capability in that area, for Nigeria to be competent in that area, we have to find a way to get it done. And today I present 5 pillar strategies how we can have that kind of capability. And I am following the fabless strategy, which means we don't have to raise billions of dollars to build manufacturing capabilities. We don't have to get into the semiconductors aspect of this business where we have to build foundries, clean rooms, spending billions of dollars to build the most advanced sub-micron processes in order for us to manufacture all these electronic products. We just want to get into I'll call it the microelectronics element. So the first pillar is education and training. In that education and training, we are looking at how do we look for the top engineering talent in the nation. I guess get them together, figure out where they are, and train them. And we can train them on microcontroller programming, train them on ASIC, application-specific integrated circuits, printed circuit board, FPGA, field programmable gate array, and firmware. And we have to have a target. Maybe you have to spend two years focusing on gathering, training, and empowering these young people. And you have a clear objective, what you want to accomplish. And this objective could be you want to give them a world-class skill in these specific areas. And the value will be that they will have the competence, they will have the capability that they can actually execute in a productive system, something that has value. And the action required is that government has to actually, if not the universities, to build a program that can tap into the ingenuity of these young people. This could actually be a virtual institute where you train them and you can also get them into different clusters. For instance, we can have a cluster in Lagos, we can have one in the southeastern part of Nigeria, like Aba, you have another one in Kaduna, then you have in Abuja. And then just like that, you make sure you bring them, give them the very best education in this specific area so that they have that capability. The second one is commercial hardware development training. There are pockets of hobbyists, developers, young people that are playing with electronics across the country. So it's very critical that we find a way to get them together in order to provide them the modern skills that will help them to actually improve what they are doing. You need to define a target, define an objective and value, an action plan required in order to make this thing happen. Then the third one is local hardware business enablement. One of the biggest challenges we have in Africa is that there is no apparatus for people that have come up with good ideas, as they are tinkerers, players, and makers, to actually move and transition from making into actually having commercialized products. And one of the limiting factors is that there is no PCB factory where they can actually produce anything. For them to do it, they have to send it outside the country and they have to import it back. By the time you do that, there is no way you can build a comparative advantage or a competitive advantage that you can compete with China. So we do believe vividly that Nigeria has to look into a strategy which has worked in China, Brazil, United States of America, Canada, and Western Europe to have a PPP project, a public-private partnership that will make it possible that will be a printed circuit board factory where every student in the country can design his electronics project and send it to that factory to be fabricated. That has to be paid. The university that where that student study has to pay for it, or if there are small companies that also want to utilize that facility, they have to pay for it. After all, that's what they do in the Western worlds in order to make sure that this is actually run very, very profitably. And that's also the same thing they did in Taiwan and turned into one of the virtuoso stories of what electronics can do in the national economy. So we have to have that process. We have to have that facility that will help to take some of these ideas into products. Without that, you don't expect people to have the ability to invest millions of dollars to build some of these facilities. And then you have to define the target, you have to define the objective, you have to define the value and how an action required under this pillar. Then the business proposal on capital. By the time we have gotten to the level where the tinkerers, the hobbies, engineers, students, small companies are that is the time we know we are building a fertilized ecosystem which can actually turn into a real thing. And that is when government can now begin to say, hey, which among these companies are actually ones that we can anchor? Or private funds can say, oh, which of these companies are actually ready for us to put extra capital? When you have them germinating across the country, that's when good things happen. And then the final one is that we have gotten to the level where nation has built enough capabilities in this area. That is the time government can go to multinationals and FDIs and tell them, hey, we are having a dynamic, a very, very viral, a very, very strong, a very, very, expanding microelectronics ecosystem in the country. Now we want you to come in because it is already evident that crystallized mushrooms of pockets of these microelectronics companies are coming up around the country. These multinationals will now see opportunities that they will have a feeder system, a feeder network, or what I would call supporting institutions, organizations that can actually help them to do what they are doing. That is when they will say, okay, I want to build a $2 billion plant in Lagos. And they know that there are small companies that can complement the little things they are trying to do. Because microelectronics is a system that is built on specialized core. Somebody knows this one very well. He may not necessarily know the other one. But when Nigeria has these pockets of companies, that is when we will see these multinationals come. They are not necessarily going to come if you just put on your tie or put on your abada and go to them and say, come into Nigeria and invest. No, they will not. The best thing they can do is just to open up a sales office where they will continue to dump and accelerate consumerism without any effort to drive research and development and build capability and competence in the lives of our people. Defining the target, objective, value, and how is going to be very, very critical for us to actually get this in right. We have to do our homework right. And when we do it right, we may not necessarily have to beg this multinational because they will see value in what we are doing. This is key because that is what has to happen. I'm so proud of the government of Rwanda for what they are doing in the ICT sector, focusing on how do you build capabilities at the creative side instead of the consumeric side. And I am confident that if Africa should follow these 5 core killers in any specific economy, we are going to have the ability to make it happen. I have just jumped so many components of this plan because of space time I have here. But if you are interested to learn more, please just get in contact. We are very happy to share our documents with you so that you can take it into your country and see what you can actually develop. We are confident that a country that has capability in the microelectronics will see a more advanced, innovative ICT sector instead of just people focusing on software without understanding the underlying regiment of the hardware. Because when they have the ability to build solid hard things, and they had the capability of making software control hardware, that is the time we can have the ability to solve real life challenges and problems that require the interface of software and hardware across the African cities. You are listening to Tekedia Daily. Thank you.